Thanksgiving morning should have smelled like roasted turkey, cinnamon pies, and laughter echoing through the house. Instead, my phone sat silent on the counter. Screen black, not a single message, not a single invite. I knew my parents' house was full, cousins flying in, siblings showing off their latest accomplishments, relatives swapping recipes. Everyone was there. Except me. I'm Hannah Parker, 35 years old, a ranch owner in Texas. For most of my life, Thanksgiving was my favorite day, a day that reminded me of family, of belonging. But this year, as I looked across the wide acres of my $5 million ranch, all I felt was a hollow ache. My parents hadn't just forgotten me. They had deliberately cut me out. It wasn't an accident. I wasn't running late. My name wasn't on the guest list. My seat wasn't set at their table. So there I was, sitting on my porch, sipping black coffee instead of pumpkin spice, staring at the long gravel road leading up to my home. Part of me wanted to drive into town, to sit in a diner and pretend it was just another Thursday. But another part of me, the stronger, quieter part, knew something bigger was coming. My parents thought they had sent me a message. You don't belong with us. But what they didn't know was that I had a message of my own. They thought I'd spend Thanksgiving alone with a frozen dinner. They didn't realize I was about to host the kind of feast they'd never forget. And when the calls started coming in, the entire family was shaken. Growing up, Thanksgiving wasn't just a holiday in my family, it was the day. My parents treated it like a royal event. The table always set perfectly, every chair accounted for. Mom's pumpkin pie was the crown jewel, and Dad carving the turkey was like some sacred ritual. When I was a little girl, I'd carefully line up the silverware while my siblings darted around laughing. I thought it was normal that parents looked at their kids with pride, their eyes lighting up at every little accomplishment. But in our house, that pride wasn't spread evenly. My brother was the golden boy. Varsity football, Dad's business partner, the one who always got the first slice of turkey, my sister. She was the darling, praised endlessly for her beauty, her charm, her picture-perfect family. And me, I was just steady Hannah, dependable, quiet, the one they didn't need to worry about, so they didn't. Still, I never questioned it. I loved my family. I thought the little slights didn't matter. I believed if I just kept showing up, kept helping, kept being there, one day I'd feel the same glow of pride my siblings got. As I got older, I didn't follow the traditional path. No cushy office job in the city. No white picket fence marriage straight out of college. Instead, I built my own way. Tech consulting, contracts, long nights, and saving every penny. One day, I bought a stretch of land in Texas. It was rough, broken down, almost worthless to anyone else. But to me, it was a blank canvas. Piece by piece, I turned it into something real. A home. A ranch. A place where the silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. Years later, that same land is worth over $5 million. Not that my family ever asked. Not that they ever came to see it. Funny thing is, even after all that, my parents never once visited. Not once. To them, it was just Hannah's little project. And yet, I kept showing up at their table. Every year. I brought pies, I helped Mom clean, I laughed when my siblings bragged. I waited for the moment when maybe they'd turn to me and say, "We're proud of you too." But that moment never came. Last Thanksgiving, I stood in the kitchen listening to my mother whisper to a cousin, "Hannah's doing fine, I think. She's always been the quiet one." Fine. That was all she could say about me. I should have known then that fine really meant forgettable. But I didn't. I still believed they'd never push me out completely, until this year proved me wrong. It started small. Little things that most people would brush off, but when you've lived your whole life on the edge of your family's table, you notice. There was a group chat for Thanksgiving planning. I wasn't in it. I only knew it existed because my sister let it slip when she mentioned, "Oh, I sent the menu in the group earlier." I laughed it off at the time, said, "Guess my invite got lost." But deep down, I felt the sting. Then came the phone calls I wasn't included in, the photos of centerpieces and turkey platters being passed around like family secrets. Everyone was buzzing, preparing for the big day. And me, I was a ghost in my own family. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself not to be dramatic, that maybe they'd surprise me. Maybe this was just an oversight, something simple, something they'd fix. But every day that passed, it got harder to believe. My brother bragged about how Dad had him taste testing wines for the dinner. My sister laughed about how she and Mom spent a whole Saturday baking pies together. And I just listened, smiling tightly, waiting for someone to say, "Hannah, don't forget, you're bringing the rolls." But no one did. A couple of friends invited me to spend Thanksgiving with their families. They said, "Don't sit at home alone. Come with us." I appreciated it, truly, but there was no way I was going to be someone else's charity case on a holiday that was supposed to be about my own family. I didn't want pity. I wanted my seat back at the table that had always been mine. So I stayed silent, watching it unfold like I was on the outside of a glass wall, pressing my hands against it while they laughed inside. And the silence cut deeper than any words could. Then the official email went out, the one my parents always send every year with the final head count, the dishes, the arrival times. I opened it on my dower's phone, scrolling through the list of names. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my siblings and their kids. But not me. Not even as an afterthought. That was the moment it hit me I hadn't been forgotten. I had been erased. I sat there staring at the screen until the words blurred. My name wasn't missing by mistake. They had deliberately left me out. And just like that, the last thread I'd been clinging to snapped. Still, I didn't call, I didn't text, I didn't ask why. Because the truth is, I already knew why. To them, I was expendable. Easy to cut. Easier to ignore. But what they didn't know was that while they were crossing me off their list, I was starting to make one of my own. The night before Thanksgiving, I made the mistake of checking social media. My sister had posted a photo of their family-only table. The caption was something sweet and smug, like, "Can't wait for tomorrow, so grateful for family." My eyes scanned the photo. A long table, polished silverware, name cards carefully placed at each setting. And right there, clear as day, there was no card for me. It wasn't a missed email. It wasn't an oversight. They had built a table and deliberately left no space for me. I stared at that photo for a long time, my phone heavy in my hand. For years, I'd swallowed the little slights, the brushed-off comments, the invisible treatment. But this was different. This wasn't about being overlooked. This was about being erased. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. For the first time in my life, I didn't even beg for a place. I just sat there in the stillness of my ranch, the night sky stretched out above me, and I felt something inside me settle into place. I thought about all the times I'd shown up, carrying pies, carrying gifts, carrying their silence like a weight. And I thought about the land I had built from nothing, the home I had poured my soul into, the life I had carved out with my own hands. And I realized something. I didn't need their table anymore. I could build my own, bigger, stronger, and this time, no one would ever question if I belonged. That night, I didn't fall apart. I made a decision. If they didn't want me at their Thanksgiving, then I'd host a Thanksgiving they'd never forget. I closed my phone. I didn't check for more photos, didn't wait for a last-minute invitation that would never come. Instead, I pulled out a notebook and started writing down names. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, cousins my parents never bothered to call. People who, like me, knew what it felt like to be left out. By sunrise, my plan was already in motion. They thought they'd excluded me. What they didn't realize was they'd given me the perfect reason to take the spotlight they always tried to keep for themselves. I woke up on Thanksgiving morning before the sun had even touched the horizon. The ranch was still and quiet, the air cool with that faint scent of cedar and earth. Most years, I'd be pulling pies out of the oven, loading my car, and heading toward my parents' house. Not this year. This year, I wasn't packing to go anywhere. I was preparing for everyone to come to me. The best part, I already had the foundation for it. Weeks earlier, I'd hired a catering team to prepare a charity dinner for the local community center. When I called them late that night, shifting the entire menu to my ranch instead, they didn't even blink. "We'll make it work," the head chef said. By morning, the kitchen was alive with movement turkeys roasting, sweet potatoes caramelizing, pies cooling by the dozen. While my parents were setting their perfect little table, I was setting a dozen of my own. Long, rustic wood tables stretched across the lawn, covered in white linens and decorated with sunflowers and candles. String lights hung from the trees, twinkling against the Texas sky. I had musicians tuning guitars on the porch, ready to play folk songs that carried warmth through the air. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, inviting everyone who had ever been overlooked. Neighbors who usually ate alone. Old friends who'd lost touch, colleagues from years back, even cousins my parents never bothered to include. And one by one, they said yes. Cars started pulling up the gravel drive before noon, doors opening, laughter spilling out. People hugged me like I was giving them the very thing they hadn't realized they needed. Every person who walked through my gates made one thing clear: my parents might have excluded me, but they couldn't control who chose to stand by me. I didn't post about it, didn't brag, didn't even hint to my family what I was doing. This wasn't about rubbing it in their faces. Not yet. It was about creating something real, something they could never erase. For once, I wasn't the quiet one in the corner. I was the host, the builder, the center. By the time the sun dipped low, my ranch was alive. Plates overflowing, children running across the grass, music filling the air. And I stood back for a moment, watching it all, and felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. This was what Thanksgiving was supposed to feel like. They thought I was too weak to fight back, too invisible to matter. But they forgot I don't need their table. I have my own, and tonight it was overflowing with people who chose me. By the time the sun disappeared behind the hills, my ranch was glowing like something out of a storybook. The string lights cast a golden haze across the tables. The sound of laughter carried into the night air, and the smell of roasted turkey mingled with wood smoke from the fire pits. I looked around and saw faces shining with joy, people who had never once been given a seat at my parents' table, now feasting like they belonged to something bigger. For the first time in years, I wasn't on the outside looking in. I was right in the center, and that's when the phone started ringing. At first, I ignored it. I didn't need anything to disturb the moment. But when it rang again and again, buzzing relentlessly against the wood of the porch railing, I finally glanced at the screen. My mother's name lit up in bold letters. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, a text appeared. "Where are you? People are asking why you're not here." I almost laughed. Where was I? I was here, hosting the very people they thought didn't matter. I put the phone down, went back to my guests, and raised a glass instead. But it didn't stop there. My brother called next, then my sister, then even my father, the man who rarely dialed my number at all. Each call buzzing harder, more frantic than the last. I didn't answer a single one. It was in that moment I realized the tables had turned. They hadn't erased me. They had erased themselves. Because as the night unfolded, photos started flying. Guests snapped pictures of the long tables, of the band playing under the stars, of plates piled high, and they posted them. One by one, my ranch, my Thanksgiving filled social media feeds. Family members who were supposed to be at my parents' house saw the celebration here and began calling, asking why they hadn't been invited. And just like that, the calls to me turned desperate. My parents weren't angry anymore. They were panicked. People were leaving their house early, making excuses, driving down to see me instead. My ranch became the place to be. Their house? Half empty, stiff, awkward. When my phone buzzed again, I finally picked up. I didn't yell, didn't gloat. I simply said, "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. Hope dinner turned out the way you planned." And before she could respond, I hung up. I went back outside, clinking glasses with friends, listening to the music, feeling the kind of joy I'd been starved of for years. For the first time in my life, my parents weren't the ones holding the power. I was. And they knew it. Later that night, as the last song played and the stars stretched wide above us, I snapped one single photo. The tables glowing with light, people smiling, the kind of warmth no caption could ever really capture. And I posted it with just one line. Happy Thanksgiving to my real family. The fallout was immediate. More missed calls, more messages, but I didn't respond. I didn't need to. They had seen enough. The truth had been served, cold and undeniable for once. They were the ones left standing outside, peering in through the glass. The morning after, my phone was still buzzing. Missed calls stacked on top of each other, texts from my siblings asking why I'd stolen their guests, my mother demanding an explanation. But I didn't answer. I didn't owe them a single word. Instead, I walked out onto my porch with a cup of coffee and looked across the acres of my ranch. The tables were still there, empty now, but the air carried the memory of laughter, of music, of a night that felt like it had rewritten everything. For once, I hadn't been chasing a seat at their table. I had created my own, and people had chosen to be there. Some relatives called me later, not to scold me but to thank me. They said it was the warmest Thanksgiving they'd had in years, that they felt more included here than they ever did in my parents' perfect house. That meant more to me than any apology my parents could ever muster. In trying to exclude me, my parents ended up exposing themselves, and they lost more than just me. They lost the loyalty of everyone who saw the truth that night. Life shifted after that. I stopped waiting for my parents' approval, stopped begging silently for scraps of their pride. Instead, I poured my energy into what mattered. The people who showed up, the ones who chose me willingly. My ranch became a tradition. Every Thanksgiving since, the gates swing wide open, and the tables stretch even longer. And every year, without fail, my phone still lights up with their names. But I don't answer. They had their chance to make me feel like family. They threw it away. And now, the life I've built is stronger than any table they could ever set. Hearts heal in strange ways. Mine didn't heal by getting back in their good graces. It healed by realizing I never needed their permission to belong. They tried to erase me. But all they really did was give me the chance to step into the life I was meant to create. They thought I'd spend Thanksgiving alone. What they didn't know was that I'd finally found a family not by blood, but by choice. And that's a table I'll never be pushed away from again.